Welcome to the Great NoDQ Debate.
Greetings to everyone out there in the NoDQ galaxy. Welcome to the Great NoDQ Debate here on NoDQ.com and the YouTube channel, youtube.com/AaronRiftNoDQ. Today we are talking about a topic that I think we will disagree on, maybe. Tag teams and the possibility of a women's tag team championship in WWE. So I am being joined by Virtue and Stephen Osborne. Should WWE introduce women's tag team titles? Stephen, I would like to start with you. Do you think this is a good idea? Yes or no?
Short answer, yes. Yes, I think it's a great idea.
You think it's a great idea. Virtue, do you think it's a great idea?
Absolutely not. And I'll tell you why when it's time.
All right, so one side says yes, one side says no. Why do you think there should be women's tag team titles?
Well, as you know, I'm a big proponent of more titles.
Right.
In this case, I think it's a no-brainer. The women's tag team championships, which I didn't know until recently, have already existed in WWE. Maybe it was back in WWF. I'm not sure how far back they went, but they've been there, and you wouldn't even call it a revolution or evolution or equolution to the men to put tag team champions for the women. It just makes sense. You've got such a bloated roster. You have enough women on SmackDown to have a 10-woman tag team, but you can only put 2, maybe 3, maybe 4 tops in the position to fight for the women's championship. So a tag team division would give the rest of the girls something to look forward to, not necessarily just something to do, but something to fight for. And of course, I do agree with you. If they do bring in women's tag team championships, I think it should be dual branded. I think it should be a team that fights on both brands and they defend against either or. But I don't think there's enough depth in the women's division to have a tag team on Raw and a tag team on SmackDown.
All right, Virtue, your rebuttal.
They can't even book the men's tag team divisions properly. Why have women's tag teams with less talent? Because there's not as many women on the roster as there is guys. So until we can have a great men's tag team division like we've had in the past during a couple different eras, why have more titles, especially for the women? And again, when you're booking big shows in countries where they won't even allow women to wrestle, pass those barriers first, or it's too much. And the problem is, what are you going to do? Put the titles on like Sasha and Bayley and then drag their story out even longer because now you want to feud them against each other and then eventually break them up? Well, you put tag titles on them, it's going to go a year before they... Let them fight already. So we have too much unfinished business with certain female individual feuds, let alone to put them together for tag teams. So one day, maybe, but I don't think, Stephen, there should be women tag team belts unless there was an entire women's federation, and that, like in Japan they have, and I think maybe in England too, something like that. If there was an all-women's federation, it makes sense. But within the WWE, they can't even book men's tag team titles consistently. So why have a women's one?
Well, I agree with a lot of the points you make. I agree that, you know, what point does it make to bring in tag team titles if they're not going to write properly for them? I also would ask you, though, do you think that with the women's revolution going on, and as strong as it is right now, do you think that they would... Well, I think they're trying to make it strong. Do you think they would put more priority into writing for a women's tag title division than they have for, let's say, the men's on Raw?
Not unless they make a show just for women. You know, they're part of Raw, they're part of SmackDown, they're part of the big events on the network. If there was just a show that aired on the network, a 2-hour weekly show that was just women, I get it then, maybe. But I mean, if you bring in women's tag team titles, now we're going to need an Intercontinental title. Now we're going to need a women's U.S. title.
Good points.
Bring back the European title. Bring back, you know, a light heavyweight. Too many titles.
Yeah. So,
unfortunately for the women,
right.
They're at the end. You know, not the end, but there's so many titles in WWE. It doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
Well, that's another debate.
They have 2 main titles still, and one on each show.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like they don't have anything.
I think you both made great points. I feel like it would be a good idea to have women's tag team titles. However, I do feel there's already too many titles, first of all. And the other thing is, like you said, They don't even book the current champions correctly. You look at people though like Sasha and Bayley, they're lost in the shuffle. You have other women. They have a lot of women now on the roster. So there are women that are not being utilized, and by adding tag team titles, you can utilize these women and give them something to do. So you both make great points. If it was me, if it was my decision, I would have women's tag team titles. However, I would have the champions appear on both shows.
And if you have women's tag team titles, they're either going to be on the kickoff show, like the Bludgeon Brothers versus Gallows and Anderson, or they're not even going to make the show. And we even predicted that for Money in the Bank, Matt and Bray versus the B team. So yeah, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, and you know, I feel personally that every pay-per-view should have every title being defended. You know, they do Night of Champions where all the titles are on the line, but I feel the titles should be on the line every single pay-per-view. But when you have like 10 title matches, that's going to become overkill. So you gotta cut down the amount of titles. But this is the problem right now because WWE is such a big company right now. I think their roster is the biggest it's ever been, and there's just so many people, so much content. What do you do? I mean, I do like the idea of tag team titles though for the women, but then, like you said, do they add a women's IC title?
Yeah.
I mean, where do you draw the line, Stefan?
In my personal opinion, you don't draw the line. In my personal opinion, if you want to add a women's Intercontinental Championship, go ahead and add a women's Intercontinental Championship. If you want to add more men's titles, and like I said, this is a totally other debate, so I don't want to get too much into this, but
and then their gender tag team title?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Why not? Here's my thing about it, and I'll go ahead and put a little bit of this out there now. Here's my thing about it. Yes, they aren't necessarily writing properly for the titles that they have, but a championship is just a prop. A championship gives you, and I've heard you say this before, it gives you a reason to create a feud without needing a reason to be in a feud. You can create a feud just by having matches to determine number one contenderships.
Right.
You can have feuds by just having matches for the title out of nowhere because suddenly you have a contender or someone in the division that's had 2 or 3 straight wins. So you're like, oh, we're going to put them in a match tonight, make it a surprise for everybody. And I think with the downplay of the pay-per-views now as the TV shows are getting more and more important with these new deals, I don't think the kickoff is necessarily going to be the worst of things to be relegated to the kickoff, because it's probably going to be just as bad as being relegated to a pay-per-view. I think there's going to be a lot more titles defended on TV in the coming years because that's where the hot audience is going to be.
Right.
It just makes me feel like you thought, you know, if they added these titles, you have Coke, Pepsi, then you have 7-Up, Dr. Pepper, Sprite, then you have Faygo, Shasta. See where I'm going with that? It's flooding the market. It would flood the market.
There's an argument to be had for writing badly for titles, but there's also an argument to be had for not writing at all for a title. A title is a title, and you don't really need a storyline to use it.
Right.
And you can use it for people that aren't being utilized at the moment. And I feel like the more titles you have, the better shot you have of using everybody on the card, even though you can't necessarily find a storyline or figure out something to give them.
Yeah, just remember what Mick Foley said, though, during the invasion. He came out and he cut this promo, basically a worked shoot, complaining about there being too many titles and the whole thing being a mess. So I do feel that that is something to consider. However, like I said, if they could cut back on some of the titles, really I think there should only be one mid-card title. I think you get rid of the U.S. title and just have the IC title. That way there's one less title. You know, just you got to condense everything.
They should shrink all the titles, and the champion should be on both shows. I mean, this roster split is just convoluted, in my opinion.
And then you're going to have so many more people that are getting lost in the shuffle because they don't have titles to give them feuds, and they can't think creatively enough to figure out something to give them.
Yeah, then there's a problem for the men. If you only have one mid-card title, then more the men are going to get lost in the shuffle. So what do? I mean, there's valid arguments both ways. So I'm curious to know, what do you guys think out there? Do you agree with Virtue? Do you agree with David? Leave us a comment.
Stefan and David, but that's...
What did I say?
Virtue and David.
Did I mix you guys up?
No, you just called us both by the same basic...
Well, do you agree with Virtue, or do you agree with Stefan?
Yeah.
The Wizard of Osborne.
The Wizard of Osborne. You know, this video is not mirrored, thankfully, because we're not doing a live video. Maybe I was messing up because of that.
There you go.
Anyways, leave a comment and let us know what you think of this video, and leave some suggestions for potential future videos here on the Great No DQ Debate. My name is Aaron Rift. Thank you guys very much for watching, and we will see you next time.